Selling your home is, it's marketed as this huge, rational financial decision you'll make. High stakes, objective numbers, tons of money.
Right. All very logical on paper.
But if you've ever actually done it, or even just watched someone go through it, the reality is it's just pure emotion.
Oh, absolutely. It's stress, it's stubbornness, and it's all tied up in these really personal expectations, a lot of wishful thinking.
Exactly. And the data actually shows this. The decision to sell is often less about the current market and a lot more about what the seller thinks the market will do next year.
That subjective expectation is the key ingredient. And today, we are diving deep into some sources that just brilliantly capture this fight between, personal feelings and the cold, hard market numbers.
It's an amazing stack of research.
It is. We've got stuff that forces a conversation between two pretty distinct fields.
That's right. So on one side, we have the behavioral science, a massive, truly groundbreaking field experiment. They randomize homeowner expectations on an industrial scale just to see how those beliefs actually causally affect selling.
And then on the other side, we're going to explore the cutting-edge mathematical tools, specifically something called self-exciting point processes, which are used to model and predict the flow of transactions that result from those decisions.
So our mission today is really twofold.
Mm-hmm.
First, to get the behavioral forces that make people list or, hold on to a property.
And then to analyze how predictable that market ripple really is and what all that predictability might mean for you as a buyer or a seller.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the behavior because it really gets at this fundamental question about market stability. And that has huge policy implications.
It absolutely does. I mean, consumer expectations about future home price growth are a central and often a really volatile concern for policymakers.
We all remember the late 2000s housing crisis.
Of course. And one of the main stories of that whole instability points right to irrational or soaring homeowner expectations. That's what fueled the bubble right until it popped. If you just assume prices will only ever go up, you act differently.
So the core economic hypothesis here is, well, it's pretty intuitive. If I own a house and I think it's going to be worth, say, 10% more in a year, it would be financially irrational for me to sell it today. I should just hold on.
Precisely. And the goal of this field experiment was just ingenious: to scientifically test that assumption, and most importantly, to measure the elasticity.
The elasticity.
The degree to which those high-stakes market choices actually respond to manufactured shifts in what people expect to happen.
The scale of this thing is what makes it so powerful. I mean, we're not talking about a little survey in a lab.
No, not at all. This was a huge real-world randomization. It involved nearly 60,000 people who already owned property, and specifically people who were most likely to be thinking about selling. And they were spread across 36 counties in 7 major states. Targeting key markets like Los Angeles, King County in Washington, Maricopa in Arizona. This is rigorous, large-scale social science applied directly to finance.
Okay, that brings up a pretty critical question. How on earth did researchers manage to manipulate or, randomize expectations for tens of thousands of people? That seems like something that would run afoul of every housing regulation out there.
Well, they leveraged what they called a legitimate but targeted information shock.
An information shock.
Yeah, and it was delivered via a professionally mailed letter. These letters were carefully designed. They had the UCLA logo, contact info, all within a legit research study context. This was all done to make sure the information was taken seriously.
So what was in these letters? What kind of information were people getting?
They were getting specific, randomized data about their own local market, their ZIP code, their property type, like a 2-bedroom home. And all the letters had the current median price level as a baseline.
But the trick was the variation in the extra data they got.
Exactly. Subjects were randomly put into different treatment groups. The 5 key groups gave different signals of recent or expected price growth. Some got what was called past 1, so price change over the last year. Others got past 2, growth over 2 years.
And others got forecasts.
Right. 3 different professional forecasts, which were just simple autoregressive models built on objective Zillow data.
So they weren't just telling people, hey, the national market is up. They were giving them these tailored local data points, some optimistic, some a bit more conservative, all designed to artificially shift what that person believed their property's future value was.
That is the exogenous information shock at work. We can make it more concrete. Imagine you're a homeowner, two-bedroom place in ZIP code 333008. If you randomly got the past one signal, which showed a pretty mild 1.2% annual growth, but your neighbor got the past two signal, showing a more impressive 3.6% growth. That difference is a specific, measurable information shock of 2.4 percentage points between the two of you.
And the researchers could actually track the outcome.
They tracked it using objective administrative records, real sales data. They could see which properties actually sold and when.
And they verified the timing, I assume.
Oh, crucially, an event study analysis confirmed that the sales outcomes were basically zero before the letters were delivered. And then the effects started to build up predictably over the 7-week delivery period as more people opened their mail.
That is just phenomenal rigor. And this massive real-world experiment, it was done incredibly efficiently, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the efficiency is a breakthrough in itself. The researchers noted they got causal inference for this super high-stakes decision for less than 25 cents per subject, which just proves that large-scale behavioral economics can be done affordably and quickly.
So after all that work, what was the punchline? Did giving people a sunnier outlook make them list their houses faster? Or did they hold off?
Well, the main finding was entirely counterintuitive for a market that needs liquidity. A positive information shock, so a signal that leads to higher expectations of appreciation, it consistently resulted in a substantial reduction in the probability of selling the property.
So people pulled back.
They pulled back. They essentially thought they could get a much better deal down the road.
They became gamblers. They were literally betting on their house to appreciate faster than maybe their immediate financial needs would dictate.
They were, and the effect wasn't small. The scaled estimate suggests that if you shift expected home price appreciation by just one standard deviation, which is about 5.4 percentage points, you reduce the sales probability by a dramatic 13.2 percentage points.
Wow.
So these subjective beliefs, which, they feel like these fleeting thoughts, they have measurable, huge effects on market choices.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. The analysis of who responded most strongly to this, the split between owner-occupied properties and non-owner-occupied properties, that really hits the emotional core of this decision.
This is where economists start talking about frictions.
Frictions.
Right. Frictions are all the non-monetary costs or constraints of life that stop us from acting like, perfectly rational financial robots. For the 21.6% of the sample who owned non-owner-occupied homes investment properties, the decision to sell is often purely financial. They have fewer frictions.
So if an investor gets a letter saying the market's going to shoot up, they have the flexibility to just wait and maximize their profit.
Exactly. They are much more responsive to that purely financial signal. But for people living in their own homes, owner-occupiers, the decision is tangled up with real life. Needing to move for a new job, relocating a family, a sudden need for cash, or just the family getting too big for the space.
They're selling out of necessity.
Or convenience, yeah.
Yeah.
Not purely for financial optimization.
That makes perfect human sense. You can't tell a family of 4 who just got a job offer across the country to wait 6 months because some research letter says the market might go up 4%. The emotional cost of waiting is just way too high.
That is the critical distinction. The non-owner-occupied group, without those life frictions, showed way more financial flexibility. They were more responsive. Whereas the owner-occupier's decision was largely constrained by their immediate life circumstances.
That is a phenomenal look at the psychological why of delayed sales.
Yeah.
The friction, the betting. But once that emotional decision is made, and a listing hits the market, does it then become, a purely mathematical factor that influences others? Let's shift from the psychological why to the algorithmic how.
That's the perfect bridge, because once a property is listed and sold, that transaction is not an isolated event. It becomes an entry in this massive flowing stream of data. And this is where we introduce the concept of a spatiotemporal point process, or STPP.
Okay, that name sounds incredibly dense. For listeners who aren't mathematicians, what does point process even mean here?
Think of every single home sale as a discrete data point. It's a point that happens at a specific time in a specific place. Since these sales events tend to cluster, we see neighborhood sales, seasonal surges, They're perfect for analysis using stochastic methodologies.
So traditional models don't really capture that.
Traditional models often just focus on the price of the home. They tend to overlook the fundamental randomness and, crucially, the interdependence of when and where a transaction happens.
And this port process model captures that interdependence, that market ripple.
It does, especially a type called the Hawkes process. This is a very powerful, self-exciting point process. The basic idea is that when one sale happens, it increases the likelihood or the intensity of future sales happening nearby in space and time.
So a house closing down the street isn't just a random event. It literally increases the mathematical intensity for sales on nearby streets tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's the self-excitation.
That's it. It's like a contagious outbreak, but for property sales.
That makes sense.
It models that cascading or ripple effect. Now, the researchers, they focused on real sales data from King County, Washington, and two key subsets, Mercer Island and Bellevue, to test this. And they immediately ran into some real-world data constraints.
Such as?
Well, we all know the housing market is seasonal, but the data showed really strong temporal clustering. Sales only finalize on weekdays.
Right, no sales on weekends or holidays.
Exactly. They had to clean all those non-event days out. Plus, that strong annual seasonality is just inescapable. Peak sales are usually May to July, with the trough between September and February.
So the calendar itself is influencing the math so powerfully you just can't ignore it.
Yeah.
So how do you adapt a contagion model to handle a predictable yearly waves like that?
This is where the modeling innovation comes in. They implemented something called the Bin-Hawkes process, which basically discretizes time into days. And they used a sinusoidal background intensity to capture that built-in annual seasonality.
Okay, so they basically built the yearly sine wave, a mathematical wave that peaks in summer and bottoms out in winter, right into the model's baseline. They taught the model that the market naturally gets more excitable in May, even before any specific sale happens.
Exactly. That sine wave provides the baseline predictable environment. So anything that happens above that wave, any spike in intensity, is then chalked up to the self-exciting ripple effect of individual sales.
And how did this complex model do against simpler prediction methods?
They benchmarked it against traditional time series models, which are generally pretty good, and they found that simple sinusoidal regression, just modeling that yearly wave, often did better than more complex traditional models because it captures the annual cycle so well.
But the point process models added that critical layer of mechanism, the self-excitation. Did it actually outperform the pure seasonality models?
In subsets like Bellevue, the answer was a definitive yes. The Bin-Hawkes process, by using both the annual sine wave background and accounting for intraday effects.
Intraday?
Meaning, it allowed sales on the same day to influence the probability of other sales on that same day.
Ah, I see.
That model showed the best overall predictive performance. The analysis confirmed the self-exciting ripple effect is a measurable factor that really enhances predictability.
And what about the geographic clustering? What do the models say about the spatial part?
Preliminary spatial analysis confirmed what you'd expect. Strong clustering, especially in dense, high-value suburbs like Mercer Island and Bellevue. A basic model, an inhomogeneous Poisson process, when you simply incorporated address density as a predictor, its fit improved dramatically over just assuming sales were random.
The math confirms what every real estate agent already knows. People buy where other people have already bought.
Pretty much.
So when they combined all three, space, time, and self-excitation, what did that market contagion factor look like?
The preliminary spatiotemporal modeling suggested what they call moderate branching ratios. The branching ratio is essentially the proportion of sales triggered directly by prior sales. It's the size of the contagion.
And what were the numbers?
For Mercer Island, that ratio was about 55%. For Bellevue, it was 16%.
So if the branching ratio for Mercer Island is 55%, that means for every 10 sales that happened, about 5 of them were likely triggered directly by the action of the other 5. That market is highly contagious.
It confirms that self-excitation is a non-trivial, mathematically precise factor in how markets move. The decision you make to sell today, which we learned is rooted in your own emotion and financial friction, it becomes part of a predictable, contagious ripple that these statistical models can measure and forecast with surprising accuracy.
That is just a brilliant synthesis of two fields that seem so different. So we've really covered two major insights today. First, high expectations cause property owners to hold their properties longer.
Right, especially those with financial flexibility. The ones lacking those personal life frictions, they're betting on appreciation.
And second, once a property is listed, the sales are not random events. They exhibit these predictable, self-exciting patterns. a measurable contagion.
And that can be modeled using sophisticated math like the Hawkes process, especially when you account for that strong annual seasonality. This convergence is really the key.
And the significance of this methodology, it can't be overstated. This research shows we can use causal modeling to understand the emotional barriers.
And stochastic modeling to predict the exact timing of market action.
Yeah.
It makes the market far less mysterious than we thought.
Exactly. This combination gives us a framework to truly understand the dynamics of these high-stakes financial decisions in the real world. It certainly raises an important question for all of us, doesn't it? If knowing expectations and mathematically modeling the ripple effect of past sales can so accurately predict and even influence whether a property sells, what other invisible, mathematically precise factors are currently influencing your most important financial decisions, from stocks to retirement planning, without you even realizing it? That's something to chew on until next time.